In the year 2013, Queensland Museum's Associate Professor Dr. Andrew Roosevelt found a fossil of a scorpion. No, not just a fossil of a scorpion that looks ordinary and is 1 or 2 inches small. A palanquin as big as a wolf for a scorpion? But this wasn't the only fossil that was quite uncommon. In fact, he found giant spiders as big as cats, giant cockroaches as long as ostriches, and millipedes as large as anacondas. And fossils of giant dragonflies as big as a bass were also found. And when these fossils were carbon dated, then it was discovered that these fossils were hundreds of millions of years older than the dinosaurs. Just imagine, a world existed even before the era of dinosaurs, where once giant insects ruled. About 600 years ago from space, our Earth looked something like this. It's not even recognizable. At that time, all continents were stuck together, and there was only one large supercontinent in the world called Pannotia supercontinent. I am talking about a time even before Pangaea, when the Earth was completely barren, neither animals nor trees. A perfect atmosphere for creatures to survive. At that time, our Earth had an atmosphere, a rudimentary, a basic atmosphere. But it was lacking an ozone layer, and for this reason, UV rays were directly falling on Earth. They were able to penetrate, and if some life forms it was trying to create, it was also trying to take lives. So the UV rays harm it, damage it, and destroy it. But because of biology, it is always said that life always finds a way to proliferate. In the same way, life was not possible in our old Earth in the land of Bali, but life was not possible in the water either, and slowly sank into the water. Life began to develop, amoeba, and later it evolved into a more complicated form, meaning that, and today, algae is a typical plant that uses just one technique for producing energy, which is photosynthesis. As we know, the byproduct of photosynthesis is oxygen. And as the rate of algae formation in water continues to increase, similarly, the oxygen levels will also increase. And now, because oxygen gas is lighter than water, it mixed from the ocean surface into the atmosphere over time and significantly increased. In the journey of life's evolution, through this process, single-celled organisms transformed into multicellular organisms, and just like that, some 530 million years ago, it made the world we know possible. Many different life forms quickly filled it up in quite a short time. Like arthropods, mollusks, worms, sponges, echinoderms, spicaea, anomalocaris, vivaxia, hallucigenia, etc. Due to which researchers named this period the Cambrian explosion. What kind of period was it when both predator and prey had come into existence on this earth? And with this, a food chain also began to establish. At that time, the ocean was filled with sargassum and moss, on which lived Chaabestedsi, Isidsi, Alucid trilobites resembling and living like crabs. These creatures were the size of today's crabs even at that time. And giant shrimps called anomalocaris used to hunt on it, which were as big as 200 centimeters, or approximately 6.5 feet tall. As obvious as humans are now, the magical biodiversity that appeared then shouldn't be overlooked. The core principle of this entire universe, the fundamental principle, is not evolution. Evolution is visible everywhere. In biology, chemistry, physics, everywhere things evolves. And time is everywhere in this universe. But in that period, something happened that suddenly made evolution much faster. Evolution was happening in those times and is still happening today, but compared to today, that evolution has become much faster. So what was the reason behind it? Many scientists are still researching what that exact link was that made evolution speed up so much. And that's why this period is also known as the Cambrian explosion, meaning an explosion of species began in a short period. The situation on Earth was such that life could also evolve rapidly and do the necessary to make it thrive. Oxygen was abundantly present as well. However, if you look beyond the water, the lands were still steep as even millions of years after the Cambrian explosion, all living organisms and plants were still thriving underwater. There were no signs of plants or animals on the ground, not even a blade of grass. And the reason behind this we discussed some time ago. And harmful UV radiation. The oxygenator was having already faced the challenge of oxygen dissolution. It could survive by avoiding its predators. But by that time, as we learned that biodiversity had increased significantly, which consequently increased the number of predators, and those hunters were not of ordinary size. In fact, they were so massive that they were even larger than today's great white sharks. And so to escape from them, some animals started moving towards our land. And arthropods, reptiles, and all other organisms took to the land, started creating a new world. But the world created by these organisms, so it was just the beginning that in the coming years, the map of this world was going to change with time. As soon as life set foot on land, humans started running like single-celled beings similar to algae turned into fungi. From fungi to small plants and then to trees 100 feet tall, it all happened. And then what happened to all the plants? A thick, large tropical jungle stood on Earth doing a lot. It looked just like a dense forest. This era, named by researchers as the Carboniferous period, might make you think it's somehow related to carbon. Well, so and just like that, the trees were growing, but at some point they started dying. But the only problem was that the bacteria that decomposed these trees had not evolved yet. Which is why these dead trees were not weathered over time. Kept gathering, and the trees sank deeper and deeper into the ground. And as they sank further, the temperature and pressure increased. And after many years of high pressure and temperature, this crushing pressure increased even more. Coal in Connemara. Yes, the coal we use to generate energy today from this period died 358 million years ago. And sadly, we almost need to deplete this fuel as well. But luckily, some of these trees did not convert into coal, and their fossils are found by researchers. After studying, it was revealed that fossils found millions of years ago closely resemble today's trees. Is a thing. The rings that appear in tree trunks are basically, if you have ever seen a cross-section view of wood, so in these, you can see several rings like this, through which the climate of that particular place can be guessed. Meaning, as the growth rate of trees increases, their rings also expand. According to observation, it is found that often if tree rings are wider, so the climate of that region is warm and wet, and if there are fine tree rings, then the climate is cold and dry. But the fossils we found had some ring structure, so it means that there is only one season in that region. But even so, in this constantly humid tropical environment, many animals were making their home. Actually, if we technically see, it would be slightly wrong to call them animals, because their size was so large, only the animals. But they were just ordinary insects. And now because their size was so colossal, they ruled the world during that time. May appear small in the picture, but its size is as big as a horse. It's hard to say horse. And at that time, the giant dragonflies would hunt non-avian meganeura, amphibians, and vertebrates. In fact, they were also hunting other small insects at that time. And their size and weight were as big as a crow's. Now, because we haven't found any animal before them that could fly, it's assumed that perhaps they were the first creatures that could fly. And now I have used, probably because discoveries are still ongoing, meaning there could have been living beings before this that we haven't found yet. Today, these dragonflies become prey to amphibians and vertebrates. As if the wheel of time moves, time grows. But in the language of evolution, we call this survival of the fittest. And now as I stay up to science, as I mentioned at the beginning, researchers have found fossils of scorpions that are 1 meter long in this period's fossils. So here comes the natural question. What was the reason behind all these insects being so large? Well, you see, what is the reason behind their large size? Their respiratory system is like that of insects. They do not have lungs like ours. And no, they breathe through their trachea. They use their skin for breathing. These insects had pore-like structures on their skin, which helped them absorb oxygen into their bodies. Now, since the oxygen level 300 million years ago was 15% higher than today, the more oxygen, the bigger the skin, the less oxygen it releases. In fact, scientists have discovered evidence of such invasions.
When insects were artificially given a high oxygen supply, it was observed that the size of the new generation of these insects was larger than before. The Arsufa had grown much larger than...
The end of all these large creatures was very near because Earth was ready for its biggest mass extinction event. This Permian month of extinction. Due to the movement of tectonic plates on Earth, volcanic eruptions occur in various places. And the sulfuric gas released from the volcanoes started mixing with the atmosphere, causing sulfuric acid rain all over the world. As a result, the level of carbon in the atmosphere kept increasing and the level of oxygen kept decreasing. And now this destruction was so vast that it engulfed 95% of the world's organisms. The world once again seemed barren, and the surviving creatures gradually faced a decrease in the oxygen level in the atmosphere, because of which the size of ozone is also reducing. Now here we see a consistent pattern across all mass extinctions in the world. In all those extinctions, larger organisms often perish, but the smaller ones survive. They often buzz because they either hide somewhere or go on their own path. Give a good ecosystem. And something similar happened then too, when the few small creatures that had survived gave birth to the future generations. So friends, the series of events we have discussed actually predates the dinosaurs. Imagine that not even dinosaurs have appeared on Earth yet. So much has happened. If you learned something new from this video, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the Get Set Fly Science channel right now, hit the bell icon for notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you next time, friends. Until then, as always, stay curious, keep learning, and keep growing.